Welcome back to the Heal the Hurt podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about enmeshment. What is it exactly? It's not a topic many people are aware of or have even heard the term. So let's dive right into it. Enmeshment is basically something that's a parenting style that's mischaracterized as loving, a loyal, tight-knit family that's protecting, nurturing, and loving the child when in fact, it actually has elements of psychological and emotional incest. And those get perpetrated through the behaviors, the communication style, and the actions of the parents. And it's very similar to codependence, but there's some key distinctions which I'm going to get into. Now, unfortunately, in this dynamic, the parent is actually using the child for intimacy, companionship, romantic attachment, advice, problem solving, ego fulfillment, or emotional release. Now, the key to this is they're completely unconscious to the fact that they're doing this. They are also completely unconscious that they really struggle and have unmet emotional and psychological needs within themselves. They're severely broken from their own childhood, in part, not just because they're unaware of it, but society and the media in particular have not educated us on what healthy parenting looks like. They've actually educated us to promote this enmeshment. So most of the things you're going to hear about this, it's not about blaming. People just didn't know. That, they weren't aware that what they thought was proper parenting is actually very destructive. They also weren't aware that they had so many unmet needs within themselves. So if you find in this video that it's yourself or it's your family, don't beat yourself up. This is very common. Few parents who are guilty of emotional incest realize they're harming their children. Many of them see themselves as completely devoted, self-sacrificing parents acting in their child's best interest. What they don't realize is that they're actually using their child in a relationship to satisfy their own unmet needs. Now, this most often happens in single parent households. It's very common in single parent households and in households where the partners aren't getting along, whether they live together or they're still married, but there's a lot of acrimony in the relationship. The parents will then enmesh with the child. Now, as I said, you're probably going to learn a lot of stuff about your family system you weren't aware of, about your own parenting style when we get into these many conditions. But as I said, give yourself grace. But also, take ownership. Do the work to heal. Your life depends on it. Your life's depends on it. Don't sweep this under the rug. It's time as a society we get the right information out and we all make a commitment to heal ourselves, and I encourage you to do the same. So now that we have a basic idea of what it is, let's move on to some of the characteristics. Now, frankly, I could have put hundreds of characteristics to show you what enmeshment is, but I really zeroed in on 18 of them and a lot of examples. But I highly encourage everyone to get a copy of this book. It's called The Emotional Incest Syndrome. Now, please, people will shy away from this because of the word incest, but don't rob yourself of the knowledge just because of a simple word. There's such great information in this for you to learn about, the type of parenting you experienced and the type of parenting you're using with your child. Instead of being afraid of it, tackle it, because it's an opportunity for all of us to get better. And isn't that what we're all after, the greatest version of ourselves? So the first characteristic is a parent who's over-involved and their lives are centered around their children, even into adulthood. This is the type of parent that's like, oh, my kids are my world. You'll see that people comment on my post a lot, my kids are my world. And these parents will tend to feel lost, lonely, sad, even hopeless if their children are gone. I call these the Facebook parents. You'll see that when the child is going through 4th, 5th, 8th, 10th grade graduation, mom or dad lament that they're growing up. They're losing this romantic attachment. It's too close. They are too involved with their child. That's too much love. It's smother love. It's enmeshment. It's not healthy, okay? The second characteristic or another aspect of that first one is these parents have very few friends and very little support. All right, that's part of why they're so over-involved with their child. The second characteristic is parents who know too much about their children's personal relationships, their activities, and their problems, and they demand to be included. A prime example of this I saw a couple years ago where a woman had taken her daughter off to college, and she spent the first week with her daughter, and her Facebook posts were like this long, talking about all the new friends, the frat parties, moving in. Like, this mother couldn't let go. Her life revolved around her daughter. She was consumed with every aspect of her daughter's life, her friends, everything. She was governing all of it. She couldn't let go. That is severe enmeshment, severely toxic, severely abusive, and that's emotional incest, all right? Characteristic 3 is sharing too much personal information, and this creates feelings of unhealthy dependence. For example, telling too much information to your child about your current spouse or your ex. This happens a lot in divorce, where a parent turns to their child and laments about how awful the ex was. That is completely inappropriate. That's looking for the child to be your emotional support and confidant. It is not their job. That is way too detailed information for their development. They can't handle it emotionally. It puts them in a position to have to choose a side. It's very abusive to dump that kind of information on a child. This can also happen very innocently, like happened to me. I will never forget this moment. It is might be one of the biggest moments etched into my memory. I remember it specifically. I was 6 years old. We were walking into Safeway. My mom and I were holding hands, and I can still feel my feet hitting the concrete or hitting the asphalt as we're just leaving the parking lot, about to get on the sidewalk and walk in the door. And my mom holding my hand, and she says, "You know, Kenny, I take you for granted." I had no idea what that meant. I just knew I felt this tremendous weight of responsibility. As I see now, and what later became, I became both my parents' emotional confidants. They came to me for everything. And there was my mom. That was the first memory I have of my mom enmeshing with me and creating an emotional incest situation. And I'm going to, share even deeper information of how she did that as I go through these. But those are the type of comments where the child now is that primary support for the parent. It's just, "Oh, you bring me so much joy. I'm just lost without you." That type of hunger and need for a child. Again, it's mischaracterized as loving, tight-knit family. It is not. That is too tight. That is not closeness. It's actually it's literally sucking the emotional life out of the child, because the parent has so many unmet emotional needs. They are so deprived within them, and they don't know it, and they'll even deny it. That's the other side. "Oh, no, that's not true. I just love my child." That's what a lot of people listening to this, they're going to see themselves, and they're going to go into massive anger and denial. Well, that's the sign right there that this is exactly what they're doing, and they don't want to confront it. They don't want the truth of, "Oh my gosh, I do adore my child in the right way, but I didn't know that the way I love my child isn't right. It's now crossed over, not because you were a bad person, but because nobody taught you." And so I urge you, when that anger comes up and defensiveness at these things, when you see yourself, don't project that on me. That anger that you feel is actually at the parent who taught you how to do this. That's your unresolved rage for how your needs were never met as a child, and you were left abandoned and neglected, and that taught you to then do it to your child. That's what your rage is. It's not meant for me. It's meant for the original caregivers that did this to you. All right? Number 4, parents' self-worth depends on the child's success or accomplishments, and it's there to really fulfill the parents' unrealized dreams. These are the classic screaming parents at the Little League games. We all know them. They just go ballistic, what are you doing? You're so stupid. Come on, make a play. Or, they're just so wrapped up, or they'll fight with the coaches or fight with the fans, fight with other parents. If they don't play enough, they go and talk to the coach. This is classic enmeshment. They're over-involved in not allowing their child to live a life. They think it's protection, tight-knit. It's not. It's emotional incest and enmeshment. This is also the college admission scandal. All of those wealthy people that did this, their whole self-worth is tied up into whether their child got into Harvard, USC, whatever it was. They did that for themselves. That wasn't for their child. That was for themselves. That situation is so abusive. It's just, and the media really didn't get into how horrifically abusive all of those parents were to their children. It's heartbreaking to me. Also, here's another example. My father would say to me, Kenny, you are the easiest of all the kids. And were you told that same thing? That you were the one that was simple and easy to deal with? Well, I'm going to read you something from Dr. Patricia Love's book, The Emotional Incest Syndrome. And a simple comment like that. See, my dad didn't know this, but this is what he was actually doing in that moment. All right, and she's talking about her own journey, so that's how the sentence starts off, but then it gets to the meat of it. She says, the revelations continued. With a therapist's help, I realized that my mother's praise and high regard for me was partly an unconscious device to relieve her of the burden of parenting. You never caused me a moment's trouble, my mother had always told me again and again. Underneath this benediction was a disguised ultimatum, and this is the ultimatum my dad gave me. Don't have any needs because I'm not willing or able to cope with them. And just like she's writing here, I did my best to cooperate. I looked around at the little she had to give me, and I made sure I only asked for that. I repressed the rest of my needs and kept them to myself. I was the hero child who was asked to come to her own rescue. Later, I discovered that my mother's effusive praise had another purpose, which was to bolster her fragile ego. See, if she kept telling me I was an extraordinary child, and if I managed to meet or exceed her expectations, she could look at me and see that she was a good parent, and therefore a good person, despite her many shortcomings. That's the Facebook mom and dad, that's the college admission scandal, that's the parent who just praises their child and spoils the hell out of them, or the parent who says, you're not a bother, you're such a good kid. There's an underlying bind each child is placed in. You better not have needs and wants because I can't fulfill them. You need to be perfect so that I feel okay as your parent. Also, I can parade you around my friends as what a great parent I am. These are the underlying subconscious things at play because our parents in these situations are so broken emotionally and they don't know it because as society, we won't talk about this stuff or teach it. It's not to blame. My dad's not to blame, but he is to be held accountable, and so are your parents and everyone that does these things. Characteristic number 5. Parents don't encourage a child to follow their own dreams and impose their dreams on them. They pick their activities, their careers, their schools, their friends, partners. That's the college admission scandal. They needed their kids in there. All right? This is also a parent who subtly or directly criticizes a child's independence or plays the martyr. For instance, they'll say something like, you sure you want to do that? You might get hurt. And what would happen if you got hurt? Who would be there to take care of me? Or why do you want to live there? It's so far away from me and your dad, or me and your mom, or so far away from me. This subtle bind that it's your job to take care of them. Or you only, something more direct is you only think of yourself. You're so selfish. Can't you think of anyone else? Or even, go ahead. Go out with your friends. I'll be right here. I'll be fine sitting here all alone. That's all enmeshment. Do you hear in that? That's the parent requesting, demanding that the child take care of them. That's incestuous. It's not a child's job. Children don't owe us anything. We made the choice to have children. And the enmeshed parent and the incestuous parent thinks that even at old age, the child owes me something. Well, the child never made the choice to be born. You, the parent, did. And so many parents have kids like props, little dolls that they're going to mold into what they want. They don't realize that's not our job as parents. Our job is to create an emotional environment for them to become what they want, not what we want. Man, I just noticed I have a lot of energy talking about this stuff, talking about the situations in my childhood brought up some of that energy from, being made to take care of my parents. I guess I have a little more recovery work to do. I love learning stuff like that. At any rate, let's move on to number 7. Parents expect their children to still follow the rules, even into adulthood, and they must accept their morals and values. How many secrets do you have from your parents? How many things do you refuse to tell them because you know they won't approve? That's enmeshment. You are sacrificing your own belief system to make sure that your parents are happy. All right? They also might shun the child if they don't do, be, or give the parent what they want. Example would be we have to, a perfect example is in my book, Your Journey to Success. I share this email exchange between a daughter and her 2 parents and how, they're just throwing it in her face that they paid for school, all the things they did. And dad's an alcoholic, and they're just saying, you owe us. It's your job to pay us back. We're old. You owe us for this. Take care of us. Well, no, you're 70, 80 years old. You should have spent your life saving money and taking care of yourself so you could do it. You don't have a kid to, be your caretaker. That's not a child's job. That's your job. Like, I'm fascinated by these family dynamics where they think as the parents get older, it's the child's job to take care of the parent. No. You're the one who had the child. It's your job as the parent to be there for your child as long as you live. That's the contract you sign, not the other way around. That dynamic is emotional incest. I'm having you as a prop to take care of me. How much more, it's just incredibly clear how incestuous that is. That's not a close, tight-knit family. And again, I'm not blaming the parents. That's society and the media not pointing these truths out. There's also the incessantly worried, the doomsday parent. You know that one. Oh my God, don't. You're going to get hurt. You can't do that. I saw this. I talked about this in my book. There was a young boy, probably 6 years old. And I was in Denver airport, and they have these trains to take you between terminals. And as it started up, he's all excited, He's like, oh, it's going to move. I'm going to balance myself. And mom she freaked out. Just screamed at him and shamed him, told him to grab the rail. What are you thinking? Well, that's mom. Mom was scared. The child was excited. And let's face it, what's the worst thing that can happen when one of those trains start up? He stumbles a little and falls. He might bruise his knee, might even get a slight rug burn. Like, he's okay. That's just, and what does he get? He learns, ooh, maybe this isn't safe to do. So now in the future, I'm going to try something different so I'm protected. But because mom doesn't know how to handle her fear, she placed the responsibility in her child to make sure that she was okay, under the guise of I'm being a kind, loving, protective parent. That's not protective parenting. We want our children to make mistakes, simple mistakes at 6 years old, that are not life-threatening, that are simple little bumps and bruises so that they can learn. But a mother or father who is like this can't allow their child to do it because of their own fear. That's not healthy for the child. Now, let's move on to number 10. Number 10 is when a parent spoils or takes care of a child financially. I have a client where this happened to her. It's It's probably the worst case of child abuse I've ever seen. It's horrific. You know, that this woman came into my office in her late 20s, never really had a job, didn't know how to care for herself. And this is what was so sickening about the incestuous nature of this enmeshment. She could have huge bar bills. I'm talking thousands of dollars. Mom would pay them because she gave her credit cards. She paid for everything. Gave her credit cards. Mom would pay for all of it, no questions asked. Anything that was destructive, because mom was an alcoholic, so she needed a daughter who would drink with her, okay? So anything that was self-destructive, mom never said a word. If she did one simple thing that was self-loving, self-care, like take a yoga class, anything like that, mom would threaten to cut her off. She used the finances to keep her close to her. They'd sit on the phone and drink. It's just heartbreaking and also incredibly courageous. I have never seen somebody work so hard at recovery who had basically came into my office as an infant, even though she was in her 20s, literally had no ability to care for herself, cook, clean, anything, knew nothing about life. And in a few short years, my God, the progress she's made is beyond comprehension. I've never seen anything like it, what she's done and how far she's come. And she's now working and separating herself. But man, you want to talk about excruciating to cut that level of enmeshment from a parent. It's truly courageous work what this woman has done. I lose words. It's just been a joy to watch her. All right, number 11 is parent who reacts with anger if an adult child tries to set boundaries or limits of any kind. They just freak out. That would be a person, you know, listening to this video angry at me. They would go ballistic hearing about this and going, oh my God, no, this isn't me. Like if anyone leaves me really nasty comments, it means they saw themselves. If that ends up happening on this video. And so this would be me setting boundaries and limits and taking away their food supply, their emotional supply, and they would freak out at any suggestion at that. The number 13 is an opposite sex parent who criticizes your partner or is in competition with them for the child's love. They basically made you a surrogate spouse. This happened to me. My mother made me a surrogate spouse. Now, it's not always criticizing. The surrogate spouse dynamic has many things in it. One of them is to criticize and be, always down. You see these mothers or fathers who are always putting down the man or the woman, the same sex, that they are just, they're an awful person. How'd you marry them? And you're going, what's going on? Well, it's because they've lost their love relationship with you. They had romanticized you, and so they're going to do anything to keep you from feeling closeness to this person. The way my mom did it for me is by sexualizing that dynamic. My mom thought I was hot. My mom would lust after me. I'd walk in the room and she'd be like, Kenny, God. And then when she'd hug me, sometimes she'd push her groin into me. She never touched me. It's what's called covert sexual abuse. In other words, it's not overt. She didn't, the typical thing we think of having sex with a child. She didn't do that. But the way my mom looked at me, leered at me, or made comments about me, it was indirect. That's covert. And so it leaves you with this sense of, man, my mom loves me, but my mom loves me too much. Like, that's gross. I don't want my mom to think I'm hot. Like, I want my mom to like me, but don't think I'm hot. All right? And you'll see this a lot. This was one of the creepiest things I ever saw. Was a couple years back in a subway, a high schooler, probably somewhere between 14 and 17, and a father standing there, and they are arm in arm like boyfriend, girlfriend, and he has his hand on her rear end and he's patting her and kind of squeezing it. Like, it was so creepy. It was so sad. And she's head up, like they were boyfriend, girlfriend. And again, people, we're so close. No, that's That's severely abusive. That's not healthy at all. Number 14, people who feel each other's emotions. This is the classic empath. Like, that's the new buzzword around, oh, I'm an empath. Well, you know what that means? That means you have absolutely no boundaries. You're severely codependent and you enmesh with people like that. You have no ability to contain your internal, what's called an internal boundary. And so the second a person walks in the room, their emotions just go right into you. And so you can be happy, but someone negative comes in and you drop. That's a sign of severe enmeshment. And in these parent-child dynamics, that's what'll happen. The parent will walk in a bad mood. The child's great. Immediately the child drops, or vice versa. Like, they're constantly transferring emotions and they're constantly changing to become the other one's emotions. And usually it's always the child becomes the parent's emotions. You know, when they get older, they may gain a little more power and be able to fluctuate the adults. But as child, they can come in a great mood, mom or dad's down, boom, they're down. And that's what creates the empath. I mean, people call me an empath. Yeah, I was severely enmeshed with. Massive codependence. Yes, part of my gift is I can walk in a room and feel what's going on with people. I've had to learn to stop doing that. That's not healthy. You know, what used to happen to me is I would become those emotions. And it still happens at times, where I will notice my affect just totally changing to the person I'm with, that I've lost containment. And that's what happens to these empaths. And they think it's a sign of, you know, a gift that they have. Well, no, that's a sign of abuse, that you need a lot of healing from having that done to you as a child, because we need a boundary of, yes, empathy is great, but empathy doesn't mean I get sucked in. Empathy means I can experience the emotion, but stay contained within myself. I don't lose me. And the so-called empath loses themselves. And they go, oh, I'm such an empath. I just can't deal. You know, that's their thing of, because I'm so empathetic, you know, I just get affected. They don't realize what they're saying is, yes, I've gone through severe abuse and I've never healed it. I have no ability to contain myself. It's not a feather in your cap. It's actually very sad, because you went through something horrible and no one's told you that you have a lot of healing and recovery in front of you, so that you can have true empathy, which is a boundary. Yes, I can experience sadness and pain, but I don't become your sadness and pain. And that's what happens to an empath. It's not a sign of courage. It's a sign of severe trauma that has not been addressed. All right? Number 15, they expect a child to call them daily or frequently, even as adults. Drop their plans. Or they will totally, in other words, everything has to revolve around the parent. If a parent calls and needs something, it gets dealt with. And if you're not doing it, there's something wrong with you. Don't you love me anymore? Then the martyr comes out. I thought you cared. I haven't heard from you in 3 days. It's been 4 hours, or like my mom. This is an adorable story. I have to tell it. When I learned how enmeshed I was and was working on codependence, my mom used to call me, and if I didn't answer, she'd call like 20 times in a row. Would never leave a message, would just call, call, call. Well, I finally learned about boundaries, and I called her. I finally called her several days later, because I had to get myself contained. And I said, Mom, I really appreciate how much you love me. And I think it's amazing that you want to speak to me so much that you call me so many times. But I need to share something about me. I've discovered some new things about me. And one of those things is when people call me over and over, it scares me. I feel like somebody wants to suck the life out of me, that they're calling me for their benefit. And that really scares me. And so because I don't have enough recovery around protecting myself from that, my only defense is to run away. And that's why you haven't heard from me in several days and I haven't returned your call, because that's the best I can do right now. And so I wanted to let you know, you're fine. You can call me as many times as you want, whether you leave a message or not. But if you want to hear back from me as quickly as possible, the best way to do that would be to call me and leave one message. And as soon as I'm available, and if I'm in the place to do it, I will call you back immediately. That's the fastest way I'll call you back. And I'll call you back immediately when I'm in that place. So I just wanted to share that with you. Now, Do you hear what I did? I never told her what she was doing was wrong. I never said she was a bad parent. I never said she was suffocating me. I said, this is what I do to myself, because it's true. I do it to myself. My mom's just calling me. We always make ourselves feel everything. I'm responsible for recovery. I got open and vulnerable about my pain and how I'm trying to recover it, and I shared with her the plan I have to put in place based on the level of recovery that I have in the moment. And I also requested my needs and wants. This is what works best for me, but by all means, I'm not going to control you and tell you what to do. Do what works for you. But this is just a suggestion, which, you know, if you want to talk to me, you might want to try. That's health. An enmeshed parent would never talk to their child that way. An enmeshed child would never talk to their parent that way. That's what healing from codependence and enmeshment looks like. Well, this is the sweetest little thing. It was like 5 days later, my mom calls. And it went to voicemail. I didn't answer. And I go to listen to the voicemail, and it's like, hi, Kenny, it's your mother. And I'm only going to leave one message, but I'd really like to talk to you. I mean, she was still trying to manipulate the hell out of me, but it was adorable. It was the best she could do. My mom had been through severe abuse in her life. She never learned this. She was still in her attempt to be better. She was still doing it, but God, you gotta bless her heart. Like I just broke out laughing. I was like, that's so cute. And then of course, when I call her, the first thing, my mom's a big martyr. You know, that's how she would suck me in. She goes, did I do good? I only left one message. You know, it was just hysterical. It's always about mom, always feeding mom. But see, I can laugh at it because I went and did the work. I made the focus on me. I healed me. And so now I can enjoy my mom's perfect imperfections. And that's the beauty of doing this work. It's not to throw them under the bus. It's so that we're in peace. And that's what's sitting in front of you if you decide to learn about all of this. All right? Number 16. A parent makes you the scapegoat and dumps all their anger on you, or conversely, they make you the golden child. I went through both of those. My dad, I was the scapegoat for my father and the golden child for my mother. And you're just constantly in limbo. You never know what's up. Number 17, a parent who's neglectful. This happens a lot in the single parent household. I mean, they have to work, but they're not there. And so because they're not there, that is neglect. You have, 6, 8, 10, 12-year-old child basically raising themselves, or they have an addiction. And therefore the child has to mature well below their age. You see these kids, I've been out recently with some families, and they have these 8-year-olds who act like adults, and they think it's great. Well, no, it's because mom and dad are never around, and the child's had to become an adult. And so the parents are like, oh, look, we have an 8-year-old who acts like a 25-year-old. No, that's severe abuse. They should be acting like an 8-year-old. That's healthy. They shouldn't be acting like a 25-year-old. But see, again, we're not aware that making a child into a parent or into an adult at a young age is abusive. It's not kind and loving. Okay? Number 18, I kind of got out of order, was being sexualized. And that's what happened to me. And I see it happen a lot. That, there's the romanticizing. You'll see that daddy's little girl, mommy's little boy, they go on dates. And it's a romantic dynamic. And that's not healthy or loving to anyone. So there are what causes, 18, but there are many more. Like I said, I could pick so many. Please, if any of this sounds like what you went through or what you might be doing to your own children, this is a great book by Dr. Patricia Love, The Emotional Incest Syndrome. Even if you're a parent, I don't care who you are, read this book. You'll learn so much about yourself and why you might be struggling in your own relationships, because you're going to see that these dynamics, even if, I talked about some pretty severe dynamics, but this happens in every parenting dynamic. Every parent does a level of this to their child. And so we're all doing aspects of this enmeshment. Nobody's immune from it. It's a scale. Some are more severe, but it's prevalent in everyone's relationship as a parent and in their love relationships with adults. So it's part of the recovery process to gain this knowledge so we can develop new tools, new skills that can become tools so we can nurture ourselves and those closest to us in the way we want to, because that's our heart. I believe anyone watching this, their heart is they want to love people as best they can. Well, we haven't been taught how, and the way we've been taught is incorrect. It's abusive, less than kind, all those words. So there you have it. If you like this content, you think it'll help somebody, please share it. Leave me your comments. Tell me your stories of how this happened to you. And as always, if you want more of this, please subscribe. And as I always say, enjoy the journey.